If you haven't seen Jean de Florette, I'd say go find a copy and go watch it. I absolutely love and adore this movie. I've seen it several times, and in fact, you need to know this. It's the first part of 2 movies. Manon of the Spring is the second part. You gotta watch them together. It's really one big 4-hour movie. But for the purpose of this video, I'm just gonna describe the first part, Jean de Florette, to you. Also, by the way, I know my French pronunciation is awful. I'm an American hick, I acknowledge that, and yet I like the finer things in life. This wonderful movie, which Roger Ebert praised when it came out, and James Berardinelli, the internet critic, thinks is one of the greatest movies ever. Amazing. It really is. It's perfectly cast, first of all. It's perfectly edited. It's a great scenario. I think the story is enrapturing, personally. And I actually have found this myself, that both guys and gals, men and women, whatever their tastes in movies are, I think both of them, no matter who they are, would appreciate this film. Why is that? Because the scenario, this is about farmers in France, and the scenery is absolutely great and wonderful, beautiful setting, and that's part of the thematic resonance of this movie. Things as they are on the surface are not as they seem, and you have 2 farmers, the Souberains, Pepette, played by Yves Montand, and Hugoline. These 2 are family farmers who in this sort of remote part and beautiful part of France, they're farmers, and there's a small town nearby, and that's their existence. Pepette is pretty wealthy, but he wants the neighbor's farm because the neighbor has a spring on his land that is infinite water, seemingly infinite water. The problem in this area is sometimes there's a drought, there's not enough rain, it gets hot there at times, so to have a spring on your land, well, that will really help grow any crop you want. And Hugoline has just come back from the army, the military, a lot of transportation of plants in this movie, actually, and he's bringing back here carnations, and it turns out, well, carnations are really a great bumper crop, but they require a ton of water, and that's why they want the neighboring farmers' land. This is a story of greedy farmers and nasty farmers. In fact, you know, they're nice on the surface, they're very nice to people, but underneath they have these things that they want, and they objectify people, including this neighboring farmer. Well, I'm not going to spoil much, but it turns out this farmer dies, and the person who inherits it is a man named Jean de Florette, who inherits it from his mother, who is newly dead, and he is a city person who is moving to the country to live his ultimate dream in the ultimate landscape. He is a hunchback, played by Gerard Depardieu, who is eternally optimistic. Like, every single thing that happens that's negative in this movie, he turns into a positive. Meanwhile, what he doesn't know is that Hugoline, who is becoming his buddy and giving him advice, is also on the side of Pepette, and they want this guy's farm. They want Jean de Florette to fail. Now, Jean has a wife and a young daughter, so they're desiring him to fail is far nastier even than it would seem. And so this movie is a series of one thing after another where Jean de Florette tries something, tries farming. He tries to breed rabbits, for example. He tries to grow corn. He tries to dig a well. And he's really struggling being a farmer, as one probably would, not ever having farmed and only reading books. That's basically his method, is to read books and try to apply the wisdom or learning from these books to farming. Now, as I said, the landscape is beautiful, but it is kind of deadly. It's harsh, it's brutal. To farm it requires tons of hard work, and then hope that, well, that Providence will give you rain, but sometimes, well, you don't get rain. And in this movie, all the farmers experience a drought in the particular year or 2 in which this film takes place. And that means Jean de Florette starting a farm. Well, it's a bad entrepreneurial decision. It's a bad business decision, maybe, but even worse is that these 2 greedy farmers want his land and are doing their best to undermine him, although Hugoline keeps visiting him and develops somewhat a heart and a friendship for him, even though he's trying to undermine him. It's a wonderful character here who's sort of, mixed motives. And I think personally the acting in this movie is beyond outstanding. I mean, to me, this is near heresy, but this movie is so perfectly cast, it reminds me of the Godfather movies, because in the Godfather, you just can't imagine anybody else playing any of those characters. I think it's the same in this movie. Yves Montand is fantastic in every movie. Gerard Depardieu, Daniel Oudalou, I'm sorry, I mispronounced that, but he is absolutely amazing. And then you had the female characters as well, and it just goes on and on and on. I think the faces in this movie are perfect. There's perfect contrast. I just absolutely love what's happening with these characters in every single scene. And then the editing is great too. The cuts from action to action, or from dialogue to dialogue, the overlapping dialogue between scenes is just wonderful. I mean, if you watch this movie for the first time, you probably won't notice the editing, but it is slick and amazingly stitched together. On top of that, the director here, Claude Berry, has, woven a very rich, intricate story. So although this may seem like a simple farmer's tale, greedy farmers trying to undermine a newbie farmer, it is also paired with the follow-up film Mononoke of the Spring. And if you watch both of those movies together and then you rewatch them and see how very, very carefully, meticulously this was put together to, reveal things to you that'll come up in the second film. I'm not going to spoil anything, but I am more amazed by rewatching this movie than I was by watching it the first time, and I was quite mesmerized by watching it the first time. I find that this movie's focus on particularities is really arresting. I mean, when Jean de Florette starts, he's got to measure the amount of water he needs per day, number of days it's going to rain, how much he's going to need to feed his rabbits who he's breeding, how many times he's going to have to go down to the well of his neighbor in order to bring back water to help himself out, how much water a new well will hold. I mean, it's one particular problem after another, a sequence of logical steps in which Jean de Florette deals with hardship after hardship. I find this super arresting. I think it's interesting about farming, first of all. Second, about human nature and how the eternal optimist here, the guy with serious hardships, a physical hardship being a hunchback, is dealing with this. And then the two wolves, the greedy wolves, trying to take his land. And then the spring underneath that he can't find but he knows about, and it could well up and give him the perfect amount of water, infinite water for anything he wants to do. Yet maybe he can't find it. Just wonderful stuff here about rain versus spring and finding water, the basics of life itself. All in all, I think this is a perfect movie, but if you're going to watch it, again, as I said, you have to watch Mononoke of the Spring, the second part of this two-part film, because it's all one big film that is stitched together perfectly. What do you think of Jean de Florette? Let us know in the comments, and please subscribe to this channel for more great content. Thank you. Have a great day.